Good afternoon. Another fantastic day here along the trail. I keep finding these nice little areas where you can follow in all kinds of different directions. These tiny little unmarked trails are kind of like oxbow rivers or something like that. And it's and you find like little treasures everywhere you go, like little pockets where you can sit and sun gaze. You see things that are like little artifacts, old bits of fences or rocks that were placed in a certain circle or as part of some structure, and it's quite fascinating to have that archaeological imagination as you walk through and veer off the path. And veering off the path, I was thinking, I guess this came to me this morning. I was just like, I want to do some Emily Dickinson poems. I have several memorized that come into my head at certain times of life, and it always gives me energy, especially when I'm looking at the sun. She was another poet, 19th century. She's well known. I probably don't have to say much about her. She was very eccentric. I think she lived in the same house her whole life. Her parents and grandparents were heavily involved with Amherst College in Massachusetts. And yeah, there's so many stories about her. If you read, about how she was a recluse, she only wore white. She preferred to have correspondence friends as opposed to like flesh and blood friends. Sometimes she would stay in her bedroom and have conversations through the door. But I remember she did get out a little bit, I guess, but she didn't travel much. I think she went to Washington, D.C. once, things like that. But she was concerned with, the deepest, darkest questions. She was kind of like a dark romantic. She thought a lot about death. She thought a lot about life. And what's kind of exciting about her is that she had an extraordinarily open mind. If you read into her poems, and like she's taking something that we all take for granted, and she's like, you know what? Maybe that's not the way things really are. Like, we don't even know the nature of these phenomena that we take for granted. And I was thinking about that in terms of, actually I read, I think in one of the videos, an excerpt from a W.G. Sebald novel about where he has this long disquisition on time, and he has this character who has never worn a watch, has never had a clock. He doesn't believe in time, and he thinks it's the most mendacious thing that man has ever created. And so it goes on and on and on and on and on, and it's super interesting just how we think about time. Like, is it a river, and what would then be the banks of time, and all kinds of things about that. And Emily Dickinson does similar things. I also was thinking, for some reason, I heard some Finnish people say the word perkele yesterday, which always brings a delight to your ears. It's one of the most known Finnish words for non-Finnish speakers, for people who've never been to Finland or don't know anything about Finland. They might have heard perkele. I've heard Italians have known it. I've met someone in Serbia fairly recently who, when we started talking about Finland, he knew perkele. And it means devil. And well, it does and it doesn't. It's more like the modern connotation is more like goddamn, and it depends. It can have like different gradations of meaning, depends on how long you roll out the R. Like perkele, it's like perkele. It's like I shouldn't be saying it this many times, but it's a fascinating word because it relates back to in Finnish mythology, from like Karjala, I think it was god of thunder, who eventually became known as Ukko, UKKO. But anyway, I'm way off the pack. I got perkele because I heard it, and I thought of Emily Dickinson because I had a great aunt who always one of her stock phrases, like she, of course, was born in the early 20th century, and she would say that someone had the Dickens in them, or like, what the Dickens is that? And it was like, you know, whereas perkele is kind of like a strong sense of devil and can take on harsher meanings. Dickens was a way, it didn't relate to Charles Dickens or Emily Dickinson. That's why I thought, sometimes when I hear Emily Dickinson's names, I think of my great aunt saying that someone has the Dickens in them. But of course, that doesn't relate at all. It actually appeared in Shakespeare and other texts from that period as just kind of like a mild, more genteel way of saying the devil. But anyway, that had nothing to do with Emily Dickinson. Yet still, we're going to. But her poetry sparks so much in her because her vocabulary was distinct, her punctuation was distinct, her rhymes were distinct, just the way it appeared on the page. And of course, Emily Dickinson wasn't, she wasn't publishing poems in journals in her time. She wrote, and if you ever get to look up her handwriting, it's really something to behold. And apparently she collected her journals and kind of locked them away, and they were discovered after her death by her younger sister. And that's how they got published. But publishers didn't always know what to do with them, and it took a lot of people to realize the quality of what she did. Like, it was not ordained that she was going to be in the canon of American literature. It had to find the right readers. And then they even tried to mess with it because she was so unconventional. She was so eccentric in her vocabulary, in the structure, and even the way she collected her poems. Like, people still speculate about what she really meant when she bunched certain poems together. And then, of course, the meanings aren't always clear to a modern reader. And so people tried to help her and change the punctuation, add in words that she didn't write, because she liked to use dashes. And then she liked to divide up her poems in ways. And it's like, was that a pause? Or is she, or is this like a disconnected thought? Or what is it? So anyway, enough of that. We've blathered on enough about, we've had enough word salad for today. So let's just get into I love the Emily Dickinson frame of mind because it's direct, it's profound, and it will get you thinking about common things or uncommon things in a very focused, particular, unconventional. I think you always have to say she's unconventional, but she's, and she had this intensity that very few people have anymore. So let's try this one. This is the one this is the first one that hers that I memorized. I used to have it completely memorized, and I would call it up sometimes. And she just says, there's a certain slant of light, winter afternoons. It oppresses the weight of cathedral tunes. Heavenly hurt it gives us. We can find no scar, but internal difference where the meanings are. None may teach it, any. 'Tis the seal despair, an imperial affliction sent us of the air. When it comes, the landscape listens, shadows hold their breath. When it goes, 'tis like the distance on the face of death. That such a lovely, lovely poem that calls up so many images. Of course, obviously of winter, but kind of like chiaroscuro effect, kind of like it puts you in the colonial mindset a little bit. But it also what it gives me, just the way she puts things together, the slant of light, winter afternoons, cathedral tunes, heavenly hurt, eternal difference, seal despair, an imperial affliction sent us of the air. When it comes, the landscape listens, shadows hold their breath. When it goes, 'tis like the distance on the face of death. And she just leaves you there, and it's just like it just feels like there's just like a pinprick in your world, and you're like, and it enlivens you in a way. I think her poetry, no matter what subject she's talking about, just her whole, rhythm, form, energy, awkward transitions, pauses, whether they were pauses, it's so open to interpretation. And one exciting thing is that if you read it with a different, you can read them in different ways, and like the meanings will still come out, but maybe you'll feel like little shifts. And another one that's a little bit more gentle and a little bit more speculative and playful is Morning. I love this one. I heard this once. This was turned into a song. I think it was turned into a song by many people in different genres. But yeah, I heard a. That's right. I heard a concert where they were using both Jane Kenyon and Emily Dickinson lyrics in some new music. It was actually quite good. So Morning, and I sometimes randomly, like maybe a few times a year, like this poem comes to my head right at waking, especially when I'm in a tent and there's like the cold, brisk fall air, and you're wondering what the sunset is going to look like. And sometimes it's been absolutely spectacular several times recently while I've been out on the trail. So Morning, this is a nice speculative poem. I think Emily Dickinson would be totally on board with thinking about things like, what the real shape of the earth is, why water always seeks a level, why we don't feel the motions they claim we do. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that, but let's see what she says about morning. Will there really be a morning? Is there such a thing as day? Could I see it from the mountains if I were as tall as they? Has it feet like water lilies? Has it feathers like a bird? Is it brought from famous countries of which I have never heard? Oh, some scholar, oh, some sailor, oh, some wise man from the skies, please to tell a little pilgrim where the place called Morning lies. It's one of those, well, actually, this is not as inscrutable as some of her poetry. I decided not to read the ones that are really, really stark, obscuring, mysterious. I mean, her most well-known lyrics are mysterious enough, and they're less discordant. Like this one's beautiful. This one goes so well into a singing voice. You're not going to get that from me, but look it up. I think you can find some very fun ways that they've used this in modern music and in other forms throughout the 20th century. But I love the lyrics, the elusive, enigmatic, and just the idea of morning and the uncertainty of it. Like, is there such a thing as morning? It sounds like a dumb thing, because from early age we're just conditioned to, oh, well, this is what morning is, this is what happens in the morning, this is what it is in the outside world, this is what people do inside their homes, or da 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 da. But she, I love how she just like calls into question. She's never afraid of asking the big questions, which in our era we seem scared to, or we leave it up to supposed experts instead of our innate intelligence, and then we violate our intuition. But that's a discussion for for probably another day. Um, we're gonna do one. This one's also, this is kind of like an in-between one. It has, at least for Emily Dickinson, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, it has some old-timey words, like a lot of her was. I mean, she was writing in the middle of the 19th century. She lived most of her life before the Civil War. What date did she die? Well, oh yeah, she did live until 1886. So yeah, 1830 to 1886. So I guess, yeah. So she saw both sides of that cataclysm. Anyway, from the safety of her home in Amherst, Massachusetts. But anyway, a feather from the whippoorwill that everlasting sings, whose galleries are sunrise, whose opera the springs, whose emerald nest the ages spin, of mellow murmuring thread, whose beryl egg what schoolboys hunt in recess overhead. That would go into a category of her poetry where she's not, and it's so funny, like there's this bird song, there's this call and response of birds above me that just started, they're not whippoorwills, but you know, I'm not quite at the age where I become a bird watcher, so if anyone can hear that, you probably know what it is. It's probably a very common sound, but I'm attuned to it, but I just like to think of it as birdsong and not get it too technical or pedantic about it. But yeah, so she's using the name of the bird that has that wonderful onomatopoeically. A difficult word. It's an easy word to slip up on if you're not concentrating deeply on it. Onomatopoeia. But what I was going to say is that it's a category of her poems where you could say it's like she's just considering ephemera, or like a specific brief scene or image, or something that she experienced in passing and she wanted to record it. She's not, in some of her poetry, she's going so deep into emotion and questioning the deepest, darkest things on earth. But this one, she's just talking about, feather from the whippoorwill that everlasting sings, whose galleries are sunrise, whose opera the springs, whose emerald nest the ages spin, of mellow murmuring thread, whose beryl egg what schoolboys hunt in recess overhead. So she's just giving you a specific scene and something that could go in passing, and most people wouldn't notice any detail or think it was worth recording. But Emily definitely thought differently, and it's fun to speculate on a mind like that. She's almost 200 years old, or over 200 years old, and then it calls up these whole questions. Like, I've been looking a lot into what do we know about history? We all know who writes history, and the weight of history, and how things start to go unquestioned. But then when you re-look at the evidence, or you put things differently together, and then you point out the contradictions in the story that you've been told from an early age, you start to question so many things about history. So when we're talking about a poet who was, born in 18, can't remember again, 1830s, right in 1830, what do you really know? I mean, even in her lifetime, she was inscrutable in many ways and mystery to most people in town. And now, what do we know? But what survives is the poetry, and she didn't know that her poetry was going to survive. She'd probably be absolutely amazed that I'm sitting here in southern Sweden on a hiking expedition, and that I've memorized her lyrics that were locked away in a drawer at her death. And it's a beautiful thing to contemplate. These forces, everything relates back to nature. We've got to get back to nature any way we can. If that's one thing of this, that I grew up connected to nature and grew up in a forest and on a lake and spent a lot of time in Finland growing up, which is as connected to nature as any other place on earth except maybe Japan. Well, same but different. But yeah, that's where it is. And then in the word, and like focusing solely on being genuine and authentic and creative in our expression, and not being afraid to go where language leads us. Into the caves we dare to enter. I'm going to keep bringing this up. Caves we dare to enter, where all the treasures lie. But they're not going to jump out and bite you. And so that's one of my themes, and that's why I needed to do this journey and this space, is to connect with the elemental, the essential, the nature, and myself, my own roots, and heal myself, and create other pathways to show other people that you can walk in the light, no matter how deep the trauma is that we all have at some level. It took me so long to discover how you can heal. I didn't think I could resolve all these things from my past, and now I know for certain that it's not only possible, but you know it. You have that conviction, and then maybe you can write poetry like Emily Dickinson, where she's obeying a logic that was deep within her soul, and she's putting it onto the page in a way. Maybe she's the only one who understood it, or maybe she didn't understand it herself. There's some speculation of what her relation to the spirit, the occult. She had a series of poems where she used the word master, and it was like she was addressing, was it a person? Was it a flesh and blood person? Was it a being? Was it a spirit? Was it a fantasy? Like, what was it? And that's the thing, is that no matter how much we think we know about ourselves, no matter how competent we are in our daily lives and running things, there's always that mystery. Even in the mundane, if you really listen close and dig deep within yourself, there's always that mystery. And it's not something to be scared of. It's again, I believe strongly, as many other people believe. I didn't come up with this idea myself. It's like that's where the treasures lie in life. And I will be as mysterious as I can be as I drag this out a few more seconds, and then say goodbye and wish you well along the trail. Thank you so much, and feel free to drop me a line.